Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hard4Games channel. I'm your host Tony. Today we have content that was previously thought to be lost, previously thought to be destroyed, details of which were incomplete at best. We have Pokemon campaign distribution hardware and software from the now defunct Pokemon Center in New York. We're going to discuss and dissect exactly what that means with my project partner, RetroAli. You may remember her from the Hard4Games Gaiden podcast. She was a guest host a number of times.
Hi guys, I'm Ali. I make YouTube videos over on my channel, RetroAli, mainly about Nintendo stuff, Pokemon, retro gaming, all that fun stuff. I also stream over on Twitch. That's mainly where I'm at, but I'm super excited about this video because if you couldn't tell, I really like Pokemon, so I hope you guys are excited too, and yeah.
I also wanted to do a big thank you and shout out to the Project Pokemon event research team as well. They did a crazy deep dive into the data that we preserved off these discs and memory cards, etc. So big thank you to those guys. Let's go ahead and get started.
This is Hard4Games. They're Hard4Games. They become hard. They're Hard4Games.
So there's a lot to unpack here, but before we get into the technical details, I think it's important to talk about history and context. What is, or rather, what was the Pokemon Center in New York?
The Pokemon Center New York, abbreviated as PCNY, was located in Rockefeller Plaza and was the first Pokemon Center to open outside of Japan to capitalize on the popularity of Pokemon in the late 90s to early 2000s, and it was the third Pokemon Center opened worldwide. The fact that this was the first Pokemon Center to open outside of Asia was a big deal because the Pokemon Company is usually very strict when it comes to how the stores look and how they represent the Pokemon brand. Its grand opening was on November 16, 2001, and the store was closed for renovations in January 2005. In 2004, it was announced that PCNY would be closed for said renovations, and it changed into what we know today as Nintendo NY, formerly known as Nintendo World. PCNY overall has not been well documented due to a number of reasons, including its short run as a Pokemon Center, a strict no photography policy at the store, which partially may be linked to theft, and the lack of cameras and smartphone tech at the time in comparison to today. The first floor of PCNY consisted of giant life-size Pokemon animatronics and statues, some that were even hanging from a giant mobile from the ceiling with sound and lights. There was also the Ultra Pokedex. It was a real-life Pokedex that kids could interact with via a touchscreen. Note, it was only Gen 2 Pokemon. And the rest of the first floor consisted of mainly merchandise and the checkout registers. The second floor of PCNY consisted of a giant Pokeball animatronic that lit up, spun, and spit out fog every hour. There was an area called the Pokemon Trainer Gym where you could play N64 and GameCube games like Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 and Super Smash Bros. Melee. There's also a glass display for Pokemon TCG, and TCG tourneys were regularly held at PCNY. There was also a ton of merch and two big walls filled with Pokemon plushies on this floor. Lastly, on the second floor, there was the Gotta Catch 'Em All machine, which is what we're all here for. So what exactly is the Gotta Catch 'Em All machine at PCNY? It was an interactive display where guests could bring their copy of Pokemon Gold, Silver, or Crystal for Generation 2 event distributions from November 22, 2001 to March 7, 2003. Or Ruby and Sapphire for Generation 3 event distributions from August 30th, 2003 to December 16th, 2004. You would insert your cartridge into one of the four stations, which were identified as PCNY-A, PCNY-B, PCNY-C, and PCNY-D, which we'll explain more about later, to receive a special event Pokemon. The themes and duration of each distribution were decided by the Japanese Pokemon Company offices to coincide with Pokemon lore or US holidays. If they didn't have any ideas, employees could send in suggestions that were often okayed by the Japanese offices. Thankfully, a collector reached out to Tony to preserve the contents of the Gotta Catch 'Em All machine. The Gotta Catch 'Em All machine and its contents were thought to be lost to time. The discs and the memory cards were most likely meant to be sent back to Japan and destroyed, and so these are most likely the only copies left in existence.
Okay, so what do we have here hardware-wise? to start off, we have 2 GameCube NR discs. These house the distribution programs and all the Pokemon contained within. One is for Generation 2, one is for Generation 3. We have 4 Slot A GameCube memory cards, 2 of which are duplicates. These are the campaign cards, the event cards. They tell the program which Pokemon are to be distributed within a certain time frame. And we have 2 Slot B memory cards. These essentially function like keys to get the program to work. They are required. Let's backtrack though, especially for anyone new to the channel. What is an NR disc? So an NR disc is a proprietary format used by Nintendo during the GameCube era. So NR discs were made to be read on NR readers. You may notice that this particular GameCube has a color scheme that wasn't available at retail. That's because it's unique and it's development equipment. These things here could not read retail GameCube games, but they could read, obviously, NR, and vice versa is true. So a retail GameCube could not read NR discs. Basically, NR discs lack a sort of digital barcode that a GameCube, or really most or all DVD-ROMs, would require to initially recognize it and then begin reading it. This has a different drive in it and does not require that, so we can just read the NR discs without requiring that particular handshake. The advantage here is that development teams could just quickly burn discs and test them on real hardware versus having to professionally print them on mini DVDs. Aside from easy burning, another advantage is that NR readers are region swappable between USA and the Japanese region. I don't believe that PAL region NR readers were swappable, but I could be wrong on that. The disadvantage for us, other than it being on a very proprietary format, is that these are basically DVD-Rs, which mean that the burn quality is not as good. It tends to get damaged and lose its information quicker, at least in my experience. So definitely back yours up today. So here's the first disc, version 1.0.1, dated November 8th, 2001. This disc is US region, it's for Generation 2, and it displays sideways for a vertical display. Now, you can actually toggle it back and forth and flip the image around by pressing L and R, but if you do that, it'll actually cut off the top and bottom. What you see here is a sideways image that I've taken in post-production and turned to make sure nothing gets cut off and you can see everything. All of this hardware and software functions in unison, and unfortunately we didn't have any campaign cards for this particular disc, which is for Generation 2, that's gold, silver, and crystal. So since we didn't have any campaign cards, we couldn't actually use the writer to distribute any Pokemon initially. There's a member of the Project Pokemon event research team named Gridlin, and Gridlin was able to find remnant data for a Generation 2 campaign on one of the campaign cards that we actually did have. And Gridlin recreated a Gen 2 distribution campaign from the remnant data. Basically just filled in a couple of gaps, boom, here you go, and got it working again. So we'll show that in a minute, but for now, let's go ahead and move on to the next disc. All right, disc 2, version 2.0.1, dated August 25th, 2003. This one displays horizontally, it's for Generation 3, that's Ruby and Sapphire, and it's Japanese region. But don't let the region fool you, because keep in mind, NR readers, you could just swap back and forth, so it didn't really matter what region this was for. So here are the Slot A campaign cards that we have. Like Ali mentioned, campaigns were just events that the center had created to sort of advertise and allow fans to flock to the center, put in their cartridges, and get Pokemon. Not every campaign that exists is considered to be lost, but certainly the ones that we have here were previously considered to be just gone and destroyed. And as an added bonus, Gridlin was actually able to find not only remnant data for a Generation 2 campaign, but remnant data for 2 Generation 3 campaigns. So now we have memory cards set up and ready to go for a campaign called Evolution Stone and a campaign called Monster Week. Now there was one more campaign card that came with this bundle, but years ago, the owner's ex-girlfriend overrode it. Unfortunately, her love of Phantasy Star completely outweighed the need for preservation and history. Here are our 2 slot B cards. These are interchangeable with any of the campaign cards within the generation, within that particular NR disc. They don't have a mate, but they are required for the machine to function. So let's go ahead and get started with Generation 3. We boot it up, and the software asks for the slot B card. This is the key to get everything going. It populates required data like machine, location, and area code. Just having the slot B card allows us to boot in demo mode only. In this mode, you cannot transfer Pokemon. And customers would likely have never seen this mode because it represents a sort of not fully set up state. Then we insert our slot A card. Note that the GameCube's internal clock must be set to a time within the campaign window, or else it will not match up and will not work. It also asks for a pad and writer. The writer is this, and it plugs into the GameCube slot 4. The pad is a Game Boy Advance via the link cable, and it's purely for show. It's not required to do the transfer. Unfortunately, you cannot plug this in to slot 4 and do the transfer via a regular Game Boy Advance. We've tried. So the Pokemon you get are not necessarily the one that you see on screen. They're random, but simultaneously set by the campaign. Let's go ahead and see what we got. Notice the original trainer is the Pokemon Center New York with the machine used, i.e. the designated machine set by the slot B card. They're ordered numerically by the transfer, and the gender of the Pokemon matches the gender of your trainer, at least as far as we've seen. Alright, let's do Gen 2, the lost data. So again, this is Generation 2, Gold, Silver, and the stupidly expensive Pokemon Crystal, good God, for the Game Boy Color. The presentation here is stellar. We start with an opening animation, sound effects, etc. Then we go into a looped animation of Pokemon exploding from their Pokeballs before returning to the opening animation again. Now we enter the cart, in my case, Pokemon Crystal, because I wanted to be able to test the male and female trainers, and this was a new feature at the time in Crystal. And we get a great little 3D animation with the Pokemon in question. Now this Pokemon that they show on screen here is the Pokemon that you will be getting, unlike the Gen 3 campaigns. Now here's me getting a shiny. This was pure luck. Here's me getting a shiny Mew. This wasn't luck because Gridlin messed with the code to make my chances better. Yay. I also like how if you leave your cart in too long, it'll remind you and add a little sound effect. Like, hey, like, what are you doing? Now, this presentation was pretty elaborate, way more elaborate than the Gen 3 campaigns. And my guess is that since this marked the beginning of the Pokemon Center in New York, Nintendo wanted to just come out swinging, like, put in their A-game. But obviously, since it's defunct, they lost confidence in the Pokemon Center, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of slowly lowered the budget and had less budget for the Gen 3 presentation. That is my guess. I don't know if that's true. Just a hypothesis. And by the way, this hardware was created by Intelligent Systems. If you remember my Nintendo DS Nitro video, they also created that. They had their hand in quite a bit in terms of Nintendo development hardware, especially back in the day. So here we have some credits with a contact, a certain Takeshi Narita. Probably mispronouncing that. But we think this individual may be the same person who is credited as a special thanks in the Pokemon Puzzle Challenge game. And if anyone can confirm this is the same person, that would be amazing. Please let us know, because it's driving us crazy. So there's apparently not really like a black market, I guess like a gray market would be the correct term for these Pokemon. Some of them, especially the rare ones, are selling for top dollar just because they came from the Pokemon Center in New York. So I just find it strange. I think that Pokemon are meant to be, you know, traded and trained and battled and loved. So I'm going to be doling out a bunch of these Pokemon to a bunch of people over time, and if you happen to be lucky enough to receive one, then don't sell it. Just enjoy. Train it. Love it. Don't become my rival. So I want to thank RetroAli for joining me on screen today. She did a ton of work on screen, but really off screen as well. She coordinated everything with the Pokemon community to make this project and preservation possible. She also did a ton of research. So if you love Pokemon as much as she does, I recommend that you check her out. She's on Twitch, she's on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those links are in the description below, and all of the links for all of our collaborators are in the description below. Throw them some love.
Just to do my quick little outro, I just want to say thank you guys for watching this video. As somebody that is a huge Pokemon nerd, I'm 1, shocked this even turned up, but 2, very thankful that I got to work on this whole project. I really want to thank everybody at Project Pokemon that's been super helpful, for Tony for even reaching out to me in the first place about this, and also to Grace and Julie over at the Pokemon Center New York History website. Their site is great. Please go check it out. They've been super helpful with this whole entire video. But yeah, just look out for more on this, because we plan on making a second video that goes a little bit more in depth on what we found, on what we uncovered in these memory cards and these discs.
So, thank you for joining us. We think you are the best there ever was for doing so, and we'll see you next time.
Games. Pizza Hut.